Assalamu alaikum. This podcast has been brought to you by Seeker's Guidance, the Global Islamic Seminary. Help us spread the light of prophetic guidance to millions around the world by becoming a monthly supporter. Make a small donation at seekersguidance.org/donate. As little as $10 a month can help people find life-changing guidance.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Allahumma salli wa barik ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Alhamdulillah. Welcome back, brothers and sisters. This is the episode 3 of our podcast. This one is called The Expectations of Youth. And in this episode, we're speaking about some of the challenges that you young people have. We're going to be speaking about it from a perspective where we want to try to give you, inshallah, some recommendations concerning those challenges. The first of these, which we're going to jump into with the main challenges with youth today and their expectations, is identity crisis. Identity crisis is where we're not really sure who we are, whether we are Muslim, how our Islam fits in the schools that we go to, our clique of friends, what they like, what they're expecting. And at times we feel challenged. At times we feel like, in order to impress my friends, in order to be with them, I have to kind of change my identity. I have to tell them what I'm not. Or maybe I'm confused about what I want and who I am. And this is something that it happens, right? It happens when you're young. It happens depending on who you hang out with. The simple thing is to really be proud of who you are. And it's nothing to be ashamed about. It's nothing to bring yourself down about. I'll tell you for sure that one of the things about when you're trying to impress friends or other people is they're never going to be there forever with you. They're going to be there a short time. And after some time, they might just move on with their own lives. The things that we find to be very important are not things that we're going to find very important tomorrow. I remember I had a lot of friends that used to see certain things like it was their life. They couldn't live without it. There were friends I had that couldn't live without music. There were friends that I had that they couldn't live without, this thing or the other. However, as you get older, you'll start to realize that these things that you held on that you thought were so important, they don't last. If there's a friend that you have that's expecting you to behave a certain way and act a certain way, otherwise they don't want to be friends with you, well, my advice to you is that's not the kind of friends that you need. I had some friends when I started learning about Islam and I changed my way of life when I was very young. Some of them, they asked me, what are you doing? What are you up to? And I said, well, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm up to. I said, why are you doing that? I said, because I believe in Islam. It's a beautiful religion. Some, they looked at me and gave me a look like they were not even interested. Some looked at me like I was crazy. Despite that, I didn't really care at all because what I wanted, I had. I was happy. That's all I wanted. I wanted to be happy. I wanted to find peace. I wanted to find tranquility. I wanted to be enjoying what I'm doing in my life. And that's not to impress others. It's not to be the slave of anybody or their expectation. We got to find ourselves. Brothers and sisters, you're very special as a Muslim. You mean a lot to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do you know that the sanctity and the importance of a Muslim is more than the Kaaba itself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You are the greatest thing that Allah created in terms of your potential. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He created human beings in the best of stature. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says those who believe and do good works, they are the best of Allah's creation. You are the best of Allah's creation if you believe, you do good, and you're righteous, and you hold on to your religion in this time that you're in. That is who you are as your identity. You are not somebody who's trying to impress somebody. You're not trying to fit in some clique or some group that don't really care about you in reality. You are the viceroy of Allah. You are a special Muslim. One day, inshallah, you're going to be a husband. You're going to be a wife. You're going to be a mother. You're going to be a father. You're going to be a leader. You're going to be somebody who others are going to look up to and want to be just like you, right? So that's important. That's important because you got to see this not as the time that you're in, but in the near future, expectations change. But we do got to find ourselves, and it has to be our Islam. Our Islam has to be primarily the most important thing that identifies who we are. If we lose sight of our faith, if we don't know who we are as a Muslim, what we hold valuable, we don't know our religion, we don't know what it means to be a Muslim, then if you don't know who you are, and if you don't know what you stand for, you're going to fall for anything and you will be confused by anything that comes your way. So that's the first thing, is just identifying and understanding who we are, who you are as a Muslim. Find peace in it, accept it, and be proud of it. And my advice to you is to find friends and to find people that make you feel good about yourself. Not people you have to act like a certain way in order to be around them. Not people you need to be a certain way or they don't want to be with you. Those are called fair weather friends. And honestly, you just don't need those kind of people in your life. Other challenges that we have as young youth that I see is atheism. And because we don't really understand our religion, a lot of our young people are being confused by these arguments that people try to put out, right? People put out philosophical ideas, challenges to, well, if there was God, why is there suffering? If there was a God, then why are some people guided and some people are not guided? If there is a God, then why do we have a world pandemic? Why do we have the kinds of things that we see what's happening? And this is a flawed understanding. That does not mean whether God exists or not. That goes back to the expectation of people. God could exist and does exist, but it's not the God you want. It's not the God that people expect. That's the problem. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that He does as He wills. فَعَالٌ لِمَا يُرِيدٌ. He's not going to be at the whim and the desire of His creation that can't even use more than 1% of their brain, that cannot understand the complexities of history, of archaeology, of science, of all these other knowledges that one needs in order to understand creation. We don't understand much. We know but very little. So most of the typical arguments people have and why they reject their faith and why they're confused is their expectations of what they call the Lord being good, a good God. And that's really flawed understanding. As Muslims, we say that this world is not the world where you were supposed to come, be all happy, live, experience, and everything's supposed to be utopia and some perfect world you live in. That's just not it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, He is the one that created death and life in order to test you which of you is the best in action. So while this world is a world of a test, and no one can come and say to God, why did you test us? We didn't want to be in this test. No, you are in the test whether you like it or not. You are alive whether you like it or not, right? And you can't say you didn't ask for it. We actually do believe you were asked. You were given that choice before you came into this world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought this covenant before human beings. And we said, Bala. We said certainly, and we accepted, and we're proud of our exception. We want to live up to that challenge. So much of the atheistic arguments about, the why and why would God do this and why would God do that, intellectually speaking, logically speaking, it is absolutely logical to say God exists, God is there, and He may do things you do not like or you may not agree with based on your limited understanding. But that doesn't mean God doesn't exist. I used to speak in a lot of interfaith events. And one of the things people brought up is God is good, God is good. This understanding that God must and only do good in this world, which is honestly not our understanding as Muslims. This is not what we believe in. We believe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does things we perceive to be good, things happen that we perceive to be bad, but it's all a test and it's done for a wisdom which we're not always able to understand. And yes, I know that sounds like, what do you mean by that? But yes, it means exactly that. Let me give you an example. How many times in your life something happened to you, you were so frustrated, you were so angry, you wanted things a certain way, but you didn't get it that way. And then later on you look back and you said, thank God that didn't work the way I thought I wanted it, because now it turned out to be something better. Just reflect on that. You'll see, subhanAllah, that much of what happens in our life happens for a reason. And sadly, sometimes those reasons are not known to us right away, not in a week or two, not even in a month or two. Sometimes we realize that a lot longer, or a lot later, I should say. So we as Muslims say, look, God does things in creation we perceive to be good, and God does things that we perceive to be shar or bad, but they're all done for wisdom. But half of these atheistic arguments are not, they're not substantiated with any real logical proof, right? They don't have any proof for that. That doesn't mean God doesn't exist. That means your understanding of what you thought God is doesn't exist. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is who He is, and He's not, going to act or going to do things to the whim or the desire of the people. So we got to be grounded in our faith, brothers and sisters. We got to realize nothing would exist without a divine creator of this universe. Everything has design, everything has purpose. Reflect on your own body. Watch a couple videos on YouTube on the science of, how your shoulder works, how your eyes see, how your mind sends messenger cells and communicates with the different parts of your body, how your heart beats over 100,000 times a day, moving hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of gallons of blood throughout your entire body, that if you add up every single vein and all your arteries and all of your veins, when you put them all together, they can go around the world, I think 2 times at least. Now look it up. How does a human being like that just be created by chance? So no, we got to realize atheism, all these other challenges to our religion, they're not founded on any sound facts. They don't have proofs that we're not able to answer. They're just, thrown at us to confuse us, to make us not know our religion. But no, there are answers to this. There's a lot of other problems. Some people have problems with the current age that we live in. There was this idea, not to get too much into this, but there was this idea in old Europe where they thought that religion and science were not compatible. And it wasn't for them, I guess you can say, right? For them, it was either religion or science, and they could never bring it together because they had things in their religion that were contradiction to science. And scientific facts were like, hey, this is what we're finding scientifically, doesn't match what you're telling us religiously, so what do you want us to do? So during that time, Europe came out of the Dark Ages and moved into the Age of Enlightenment, right? And then they moved from a shift from being religiously centered into making science now the primary source of guidance for their societies, right? So they had a separation between church and state. They had a separation, in this case actually, between the religion and science. And science, you can say, won over, right? Science won the battle here. And so ever since last couple 100 years, science has been the driving force and the base of how we, or in the West, how they view the source of matters, right? If it's not scientific, if it's not proven, we don't believe it. That kind of idea. Now, Islam is different in that Islam is not only compatible with science, but actually many of the verses of the Quran and the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ challenged people. Reflect, look into creation, look up in the universe, look upon the mountains, the stars, the sun, the moon, reflect on your own creation and all these different things that Allah said. Reflect and you'll see. Don't you see that the moon is reflective light, for example, and the sun produces its own light? Don't you see how the planets are swimming or moving in their own orbit? Don't you see this? Don't you see how we created human beings in the womb of their mother in 3 stages, right? And they're embryonic levels of the description in the Quran. Something no human being could have known without a microscope, certainly 1400 years ago. So our religion is very in line with science. But what we say is science cannot tell us the why of things. It can observe, it can measure, it can reflect, but that reflection and looking and realizing that Allah is the one that created everything and it's done for a purpose. If we do not connect science with God and realizing the purpose of why He created what He did, or that scientific observing that scientific matter or that thing you are looking at and observing and reflecting upon, if that does not make you understand and point you to the direction of God's existence and His divine wisdom, then there's no benefit in that. Then that's not what we look at, right? Then we would say that's knowledge that has no benefit. Beneficial knowledge is when we use science, we reflect, we analyze, but then that leads us to a stronger understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are some of the challenges that some of our youth have. Another question I was asked was, what should be the focus of our youth be in our time? Well, I would say that the best thing the youth can do is build yourself. Develop foundations in your religion. Look, nothing is going to empower you and make you a better Muslim than learning about your religion. We must be grounded in our belief. We must be grounded in our practice. We must know why we do things. And we need to know that there are proofs for what we are doing. When I got into Islam, my teacher, I asked him, I said, what are the proofs that Islam is true? As I didn't want to at that time just follow religion just because my parents did it. And that was the correct understanding. My teacher, he smiled at me. He said, the proofs are many. And indeed, over 20 years now, I always look back and I keep learning new and newer proofs too, that our religion, no doubt, is the truth. And it's not just faith. This is backed by scientific evidence, by many kinds of proofs that we have. So that is what you need to build yourself. You have to be strong in your faith. You have to know why you're strong in your faith. You have to look at those kind of videos that I recommend, the scientific angle of what makes the Quran a miracle, and what makes some of the statements of the Prophet ﷺ when he told us certain things, why they're miraculous, and how people didn't know it by hundreds and hundreds of years. Some things the Prophet ﷺ brought and taught us, they did not discover for 1300 years. Some things for 500 years, some things for 900 years. These were all knowledges that we were taught in our religion over 1400 years ago. But how are we going to know that without making ourselves strong in our faith? Having a grounding that is sound and strong in our religion, and that comes only through knowledge. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, we have to, as youth, focus on what things make us truly happy. You got to realize much of what distracts us from our faith and religion is not really making us happy. It's just digging a bigger and bigger and bigger hole while we are trying to find tranquility and happiness. All this, striving for worldly things or worldly, for example, social media, Instagram, all these things it's an instant fix. It's something that we get a little bit of pleasure by looking at what people are doing. But when we keep scrolling, we don't go to one thing and then we're satisfied, we're happy, we're done. We put it down, we just smile and walk away. No, we keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. We're looking for a type of happiness. We're trying to find what brings us happiness and tranquility. And my advice and our focus should be that look at what truly brings you happiness, what is wholesome and complete in our religion. Some of those things are being with parents, being with family, finding halal and wonderful, wholesome things that make you happy. Whether that's to spend time with your family, spend time with your parents, spending time enjoying halal and wonderful meals, going outdoors, going hiking, going swimming, doing archery, finding cool and fun halal other things to do, being scientific, discovering things that you love reading about. A lot of things that we can find that truly makes us happy in a halal way. I would say that is what our focus should be. So 2 things. Number 1, find what makes you religiously strong by seeking knowledge and being grounded in your faith and finding the proofs and stuff like that to make you strong. 2, find avenues to bring yourself to tranquility and happiness by seeking what things are halal, that Allah allowed, and through it you will find a wholesomeness that you will not find in other things that you think are fixes, but they're just momentarily make you happy, but then you're going to keep striving for other things. The third question I was asked that I wanted to address are, what are some halal alternatives for youth to engage in? Much of that I just covered actually. Amongst them, sports. Social gatherings for Muslims is a good idea. If you have a local mosque, you have a local community, if there are things being held there that is of interest to you, whether that's hiking, game night, things you can do in the masjid that is fun and wholesome, find those things to do. Hiking. I myself, I'm a basketball player when I was growing up. I loved basketball, right? That's a wonderful sport to play. Being in nature. Some people find peace and tranquility in writing, drawing. Find things you can draw that you really like. Some people, my daughter, she's into drawing. Writing stories, cool stories, whether that's fiction or otherwise. Finding things to share, keeping a journal, sharing about your thoughts in your life. All of these things are healthy things to do, right? Unhealthy things are things like, God forbid, you want to go to a party, you're trying to go to a club, you start wanting to go dating, right? All these things are haram. And all of these things like alcohol and dating and all these things, it's not just that they're haram. Why can't I do them? It's because what it does to you. That's the problem. What do these things do? It's not that you're just one thing that's haram. It's also, yes, what Allah told us it's haram, but they're going to lead you into many other things that are haram. For example, someone that drinks alcohol, we see this on the news. They go get behind a car, they're driving, God forbid. I know one case in the news, they hit somebody and now that guy's going to spend 50-something years in jail. 17-year-old, 18-year-old, right? Drinking too much at a party, unaware, they take the lives of other human beings. Going to a party, getting drunk and doing haram things that now might affect the rest of your entire life, right? These are not things that are good for us. These are unhealthy and terrible things to do, as well as, another very strife thing that's happening in our time is people spending tons of time on social media, on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and on and on and on. Internet browsing. Some of those are moving to the category of useless things, which is not haram, right? Maybe you're watching basketball games, soccer highlights, certain memes that are halal, right? They're useless. They're not going to get you reward, but at least they're not sinful. But now, amongst the things you're going to be doing now, something else pops up that's disliked. Something else pops up that's haram, right? So something else pops up that's haram, and now you're in a problem. You're in a scenario where you didn't mean to do haram, right? You wanted to go on your Instagram. You wanted to see what people are doing. You want to check out what they're up to. All of a sudden now, you are doing something you totally didn't plan, and now you're involved in haram. Now that haram could lead into other haram, God forbid. And this is what youth have a problem with, is control, right? Some people go into Instagram accounts and instead of checking theirs, they start going into other things. Then they start spying on people, looking at who this person is, what that person is doing. Then they see pictures that are inappropriate, but they keep going. And now after they get off, a lot of black spots just came on the heart from those types of things we shouldn't have been doing. So now we have a problem. We've committed a sin. We have a dark spot in our heart. We're starting to now see things a little bit different. When we thought something was totally haram, now we don't see it so haram. Because now we're looking at things we shouldn't be looking at. And that put down a certain standard. Those put down a certain wall. Maybe you had a wall up, maybe things you never wanted to do, but now those things that you just were involved in, those broke those walls down. And now, what stops you from doing other haram things now? What stops you from getting involved into other things that are even worse? And that's what people do, and that's what people are involved in. Nobody starts off saying, I'm going to go do this, this, and that, that's haram. It all starts on stages, right? I knew people back when I was growing up, they went to one party they shouldn't have been going to. They got drunk. They did some wrong things. They started, one thing led to another. They started getting into drugs. Then they were married. They lost their job. They lost their marriage. They lost their kids. They become drug addicts. Believe me, and I'm not lying to you. I'm telling you of a true case that I know. The person never wanted to do that to their life or their family, but it all started off on drinking a little and what's a little bit of drugs going to do. And those are the things that destroyed their life, right? So everything adds up. When we look at something haram, it's not just that you're just looking at something haram. It's where is this going to lead you to? It's going to lead you to desiring things you cannot have, wanting to do things you shouldn't be doing. And now you want to go out and you want to find somebody just like what you were looking at, right? So now you get into dating, and then you get into inappropriate relationships, and then you stop praying, and then you leave your religion, and then you find yourself with groups of people you shouldn't be with. And then that totally carves your life going a different direction all your entire life. That's a problem. You see, that's why one of the beautiful things of our faith is it cuts off things at the base and doesn't allow it to grow the wrong way. And that's why we cut these haram things off at the base, so that we don't get exposed to those things. They're not going to make us happy. They're not going to better our lives. They're just going to ruin it, basically. So be very careful. Look for alternatives that is not haram and enjoy it, right? No one said you have to stay home, read the Quran all day, pray all day, and do nothing but religious stuff. Definitely not. That's not what our religion teaches. Now, the next question I was asked was, what was it like when you were growing up, and what were the challenges? Oh boy. Well, when I was growing up, and I'm sure with you and any youth listening to this, there are parties, they're dating, and they're drinking. Things don't change a whole lot, folks. It's always the same thing, especially in high school. People going out dating, people are drinking, people are partying. That's usually it. And it's pretty sad if you really think about it. What makes people happy, right? Being together, drinking, and doing haram things. Like, that's not all there is to life. But that were the main challenges when I was growing up. Few people just go to school, high school, come home, and they're really good people that focus on their studies. It's easy to get lost, and friends is a big factor, and we'll be speaking about that perhaps a little bit later. But for now, I just highlight that. Be careful who you hang out with, because that is really what's going to change your life. I had really good friends when I was growing up. Well, some were really good friends in that they didn't drink, they didn't smoke, they didn't do anything haram like that. And we were athletes, right? We got into basketball, we did a lot of sporty stuff. And that helped us stay positive and do things that were healthy and not destroying our body. The next question here is, what advice do you have for youth who are not interested in religion? Well, to be honest with you, there is a saying that one of the scholars of Islam, he said, Ibn Attaining, that the one who found God, what did he really lose? And the one who did not find God, what did he really find other than God? We have to realize, by being interested in Islam and by practicing and believing in it, you have found everything good that there is to have. You have found everything wonderful that there was to be found. When you believe in God and you find peace in it and you worship the way you're supposed to and you're really enjoying it, you have every good, not just in this world, but the hereafter too. So I'm very sad at many of our youth who are not interested in religion, and part of it is just because they have desires for other things. It's understandable, because at a young age, with so much fitna and so much tests and trials and seduction and other things that we're tempted with, and even if we're at home, we're exposed to it through social media, through looking at what others are doing, we become tempted. So those become our interests, not religion. That's why to really have people, young people, be interested in religion, they need to be involved at a younger age. They need to learn the Islam at a young age and then be connected to worship and knowledge. You just can't learn about your religion and then that's it. You have to learn about your religion and you have to practice your religion. So you practice with meaning. You don't just pray because your parents told you, go pray, go pray. But when you pray, you know the meanings of what you're doing. You know what you're praying, right? So it means more to you, and that's what's important. That is what's important. So And I would say another advice is no matter what you're into, if you're not interested in religion, no matter what you're into, it's not going to make you happy in the end. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, "Ala bi dhikri Allahi tatma'inna al-qulub." Isn't it verily through remembrance of Allah that hearts truly find peace? Hearts are truly tranquil through the remembrance of Allah. So we know as Muslims that true tranquility and happiness and satisfaction is only through Allah and only through His remembrance and what connects to the religion. Everything other than that is an emptiness in the end. And I can attest to this, being that I was young. I learned Islam when I was 18 years old, and no matter what, before that, I never had any true happiness. Yes, there were things you do that's fun and enjoyable, but in the end, you're always empty. You're not satisfied. And that's the fact. That's the truth of all this whole thing is no matter what else you're into, it's not full tranquility. You will always find something missing in your life. When an atheist stares at the ocean, or when a person who is lost and is a sinner but marvels at the great creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but can't connect that moment to his Lord, his soul in that moment is searching for peace, is searching for meaning and tranquility. But when they remove God from the equation, subhanallah, they will not find anything that truly makes them happy. They're just going to enjoy that moment in a limited way, but they're going to be empty in the end. And that's why people who drink, people who party, people who go out, they need to constantly do it because they're never satisfied, right? And so those who are not interested in religion, you got to look at what makes you interested in what you're doing, and then realize that that's only temporary and it's not going to last. Where religion lasts in this world and the next world, and is attested to by people who used to party, who used to go out, now they're Muslim, they changed their life. Talk to them, hear their stories, hear what made them change. And I think that's what's going to help you. And of course, again, finding good friends to share that with is very important. It's very important. Life, brothers and sisters, is super fast. Just reflect on your own life a couple years ago, what things you were into, what things you were interested in, and look at how interests change already. We change what we're into and what we like, sometimes monthly, sometimes yearly, and so follow that which never has changed. Fall in love with that which is always constant, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and this beautiful religion. So, there is also a verse that says, what is in your possession, مَا عِنْدَكُمْ يَنْفَدْ وَمَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ بَاقٍ. That what is in your possession, what you have, diminishes, dwindles away, and what is in God's possession remains eternal. So understand that what Allah has with Him subhanahu wa ta'ala, the rewards, the tranquility, the happiness you get by worshiping Him and by following this religion is everlasting. And what you have and what you're enjoying is going to diminish eventually. It's not eternal. It will diminish. And there's a verse in the Quran that really puts things in perspective between those things that are found pleasurable for people and how it doesn't last. In the 3rd chapter, verse 14, the translation reads, "The love of desires, of women and sons and hoarded treasures, of gold and silver," and basically money, desire, the opposite gender, and at times children. And the verse continues, "And well-bred horses and cattle and tilth is made to seem fair to men." In other words, pleasurable, enjoyable. And then look what Allah says, ذَلِكَ مَتَاعُ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. That is the provision of the life of this world. وَاللَّهُ عِنْدَهُ حُسْنُ الْمَآبِ. But Allah is He with whom is the good goal of life. That is the one whom is going to give you the greatest of what you seek. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran to His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, وَلَلْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لَكَ مِنَ الْأُولَى. Verily the next world is much better for you than the former, than this world. And even the latter part of his blessed life was much better. So realize, brothers and sisters, you're struggling, you want to do things you can't do, you want to do certain things that maybe your religion doesn't allow you to do and you find struggle in it. Realize that inshallah there will come a time very soon when what Allah promises you of ease and guidance and happiness by obeying Him will be much better than the humiliation and sadness and loneliness you'll feel by doing the sins now and paying for it later. They had a study done. One of my teachers mentioned that they went up to a bunch of people and they asked them a question. Do you want one cookie now? Or would you have, like a box of cookies later, basically? And some people said, I'll take a cookie now. And many said, no. These were like younger children. And they said, no, we'll take the box later. And then they did study these people and they found that they were much more intelligent, those that said we will get, 2 cookies or a box of cookies later. So now if you ask yourself, how can you compare what this world of 50, 60 years compares to the pleasures of eternity? A world that never, ever, ever, ever ends. It goes on forever and ever and ever. So let's be intelligent and smart and choose that which is eternal over the very ephemeral temporal world that we're in, and it's going to go by like a blink of an eye. On the Day of Judgment, many people will look back and regret many of their lives and their situation. And some of them would swear that they think that they were in the earth for just a day or half a day. Some will even see this world as if they were here for an hour. That's why there's a saying that this world is like an hour, so make it an hour of obedience, right? So that's pretty much what I have to say about that. And then, what methods have you seen transform youth? What programs or activities do you recommend? Well, I would say ultimately change is from Allah and Allah alone. Allah guides whom He wills, and He leaves to go astray whom He wills. What do we mean by that statement? Just want to touch up real quick on this. When we say Allah guides whom He wills, it means that when you are guided, you choose religion, you choose obedience, and then you get guidance. Allah is the one that facilitated that guidance. You get the reward of choosing that. When we say He leaves astray whom He wills, that if a person goes the wrong way and went astray, that person chose to go astray. That person chose or abandoned guidance, abandoned Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah removed His help from them. Allah removed His aun. Allah removed His guidance from them. And when Allah removes guidance and He doesn't guide you, the default is you are forsaken. You go astray. So that's why many of the scholars, they have this prayer, "Oh Allah, don't leave us to our own whims and desires for even a second, a blink of an eye." Why? Because if it was up to our power alone, we would not be able to do anything. So every good that we have, what I'm trying to say is every good that we have, whether we pray, whether we fast, whether we love Allah, it's all a gift from Allah. But every bad that we do, we are the ones going to earn the sin, but it is still Allah who allows you to go astray, because if He wanted, He could have guided you, right? But you do got to understand that responsibility falls on the individual. But when I say ultimately it's from Allah, yes, ultimately it is Allah's guidance, but there is not any particular program that I see that I recommend. I think what really works in a lot of cases is the following. Find a really good teacher, a scholar, a sheikh, somebody that you look up to based on their knowledge, based on their action, and someone that's really amazing. For me personally, it was Hamza Yusuf, amazing sheikh, a scholar in which I really benefited from him a lot, and he really changed my life. Without that, I don't think I would be where I am. So you need to find that kind of a person that inspires you, that, can change your life, right? Can encourage you to want to change your life. Some of the programs Masajid have are probably good idea to go to a program that there's guidance, there's a topic for youth. something like that. Those are all worth a try, and everything is good. Expose yourself to as many good programs as possible. You never know which one would change you. I've done some Muslim camps where I went out and I gave talks to youth. I think those are really wonderful. It gets you away from the city. It gets you to look at nature, reflect on nature, be with nature, be with really like-minded Muslims who pray together, eat together, and spend a few days together away from all the madness and crazy trials and tribulations of this world. That could also be a very powerful factor. So, get out, do something, find programs, and inshallah, anything you're a part of is definitely worth a try. But ultimately, it's from Allah. That if we do see good, things change, it's from Allah. The Prophet ﷺ always used to acknowledge Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for every good guidance that occurs. He would always thank Allah as He is the main and only source of every good. Finally, the last question of this podcast that I want to take from a dear friend who asked me these. What are the top 3 things youth need to do in their life? Like if you had to bring it down to 3 things, what would it be? So as a recap, I think the first I would say is learn the religion correctly. I say this to Muslim adults, youth, even non-Muslims, to learn Islam. Most people reject Islam not because of the truthful things about our religion, but they reject it on the lies and the false allegations that are spread about our religion. Islam is beautiful. Allah is beautiful. There's a hadith, Allah is beautiful and He loves beauty. Everything in our faith, honestly, holistically looking, is beautiful. Everything makes sense. Allah has told us how, what, when, why, to everything that we have. There was a man who converted to Islam. All his life he said, I looked for 2 questions. I wanted to know who I am, who made me, what's my role, who am I? And I want to know what we're doing on earth. Like, what's our journey? What are we going to do? What's going to happen after you die? He said, I kept looking at different religions, and one day I found a verse in the Quran, one verse that answered all my questions that I'd been seeking. And that is, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi rajiun. Verily, we belong to Allah. That's who you are, as your identity. You came from God, and wa inna ilayhi rajiun. And you're going back to Him. Hence, God created you, He put you on the earth for a test, and you're going back to Allah to spend eternity in the hereafter. And that was so beautiful and very moving for me, because in one verse, this poor guy, all his life, he's been looking for a faith that made sense. He said no one answered that question for him. And Islam, in one verse, answered it all. So learn the religion correctly and spread that correct knowledge to others. Number 2, I would say, find that alternative halal outlet that would make you enjoy your life, that would make you, just take it easy, have the lighter side of things. If you want to go out, be in nature, play games, whatever, as long as it's halal, it's good, there's nothing wrong with it, then go for it and enjoy it. So that's my advice. And I say that because we don't want youth all the time to just think, faith is so hard. It's hard being a Muslim. No, it's easy being a Muslim. Honestly, it's easy being a Muslim. The only thing you're told to do every day really is just pray 5 times a day. You're not told to fast every day or give zakat every day or go to Hajj every day. You're told to pray 5 times. Well, it's not even 50. The original was that you're supposed to pray 50 times a day. It's not even 50. It's 5. And those 5 prayers, if you add it up, is not going to take you more than 15 minutes a day. We're given 24 hours. All of our worship is less than 15 minutes, not even a quarter of one of those 24 hours. How can we complain? Brothers and sisters, let's never complain. Allah has made it very beautiful and easy for us. So find your peace, as long as it's halal, as long as it's something you can do that's alternative. That's the second good thing that I would recommend, is you can do in your life, as it would bring balance to whatever else you're doing. And third, what I really think you need to do is find good company, real friends, friends that make you a better Muslim, friends that, encourage you to do good. This is what helped me tremendously when I was young and I got into Islam. I met about 12 to 15 really awesome people that were very knowledgeable. They found fun things to do as young Muslims, and it wasn't hard for me to adjust, to learn, and be enriched by them. So, It really comes down to learning the religion and being with good, pious people. And if you can't find good, pious people, then the remembrance of God will be your best friend. Send salawat upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Read wonderful books on Islam. Spend moments where you have your spirituality. So that concludes this episode of The Expectations of Youth. Taking 7 basic questions and hopefully shedding some guidance and some light to you all. May Allah bless you and keep you well. Until the next episode, this is Yama Niazi. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for listening. This podcast was brought to you by Seekers Guidance, the Global Islamic Seminary. Visit seekersguidance.org to access reliable Islamic knowledge taught by qualified teachers. We offer a wide range of courses, podcasts, articles, and a world-class answer service. Support us in spreading free, reliable Islamic knowledge to millions around the world by becoming a monthly supporter. Visit seekersguidance.org/donate and make a small monthly commitment today. Our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, "Whoever guides someone to goodness will have a similar reward." So don't forget to share this podcast and spread prophetic guidance.